Should be fun.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar for today. We will be promptly starting at 1 p.m. today. So just a few minutes, we'll let everyone roll into the webinar, and we're looking forward to the session this afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario's webinar. This is part 2 of our Elder Mediation series. So today we're going to be looking at a realistic look at elder mediation. Just a few housekeeping items before we launch into our speaker. For communication, all attendees today will be muted during the webinar. Of course, as always, we provide a recording which will be available on our website a couple days after our webinar. We're happy once again to be able to provide ASL interpreters. The name and image of the interpreter will be visible during the whole webinar. You can adjust the size of the presentation versus the video. So all you have to do is drag the line in between the presentation and the video right or left to make either smaller or larger. So please keep the chat in the chat box, and we encourage you to put all of your questions into the Q&A box, and we will ensure that there's at least 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the presentation for the Q&A with our keynote speaker today. And we also encourage you at the end of the webinar, you'll see an evaluation box pop up, and please take the few minutes, not even about 60 seconds, to fill out that evaluation. Your feedback is so important, and this is where we get the ideas for future webinars like the one that you're seeing today. I do want to take a moment and acknowledge the land in which we reside. We acknowledge that we gather on the traditional territory of a number of First Nations and acknowledge their stewardship of this land throughout the ages. We seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one that is based in honor and deep respect. May-wich. So this is a brief overview of what the flow of the webinar today is going to look like. So we're going to look at examples of elder mediation scenarios and their real outcomes for real families. What issues are appropriate for elder mediation? And of course, what issues may not be appropriate for elder mediation? Who can participate in the process of elder mediation? And what are some of the unique challenges within elder mediation? Why choose an elder mediator? How do mediators work within the legal, health, and government system? And this is certainly a question we get quite often, so I'm interested in that answer. And a very important question to be answered today is, how do you find that qualified elder mediator that's going to be able to support families through conflict? And then, of course, always allowing time for those important Q&As. So let's get right into the presentation. Oh, before I tell you about our organization, of course. I'm so excited to hear Julie speak, so I just want to jump over our typical slides. A little bit about us. I think everyone can agree with our mission that we have at Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario. We envision an Ontario where all seniors are free from abuse, have a strong voice, feel safe and respected. And the ways in which we do that is what I'm doing here today, is webinars, education, public awareness, and we work with like-minded organizations advocating for the rights of seniors. Now we're into the good bit here. Without further ado, I'm very thrilled to introduce our keynote speaker, Julie Gill. I first met Julie sitting on the Durham Elder Abuse Committee, which she attends monthly, which shows her true support for this issue around preventing and combating elder abuse. Julie Gill is one of very few mediators to hold the International Elder Mediator Advanced Certificate from both Family Mediation Canada and the Elder Mediation International Network. Julie is a certified specialist in family mediation, receiving her FDRP mediation designation from Family Dispute Resolution Institute of Ontario, and as their first chair-elect incoming in November 2021. Julie is an arbitrator as well as a certified divorce financial analyst. And Julie is currently the owner and principal mediator and arbitrator at Family First Mediation. Well, Julie, I'm going to stop my share so you can jump into your presentation.
Thank you so much, Laura, and everybody for having me. I'll get my slide up. So it sounded pretty good, didn't it?
It did.
Sounds great on paper.
It does.
And a lot of interesting things, you know, that kind of blend together quite well, I think, for the work that I do, right? So I will go back for a moment. Slide is up okay? You got my PowerPoint?
Yeah, it looks good, Julie.
Perfect. All right. So a little bit about me, a little bit of background to give you some context around, you know, to help frame the conversations that we're having today. So I started Families First in 2009, and it started with separation and divorce mediation. And that was based on life experience that got me there. Second career, I came from a career as in banking, and I was assistant vice president. So happy with numbers. I work really well with numbers, quite happy in that area. Also went through a not so good separation, which kind of led me into dispute resolution and helping families. So you kind of roll things together, it made perfect sense for me to evolve into kind of taking a more holistic look at families and offering support through the whole family life cycle and the different scenarios and the different services that can be offered and included for family dispute resolution, or FDR, as we call it. So not just mediation, where the families get to make all the decisions themselves. There's kind of a mediation arbitration offering that you can mediate to the extent that you can, and if something gets left unresolved, then it can go to arbitration, in which case, as the arbitrator, I would make a legally binding decision. Arbitration, which is kind of, you know, people say it's the private courtroom, but it's really a way to have a decision made without having to go through the courts that is legally binding, but you get to pick the professional and you get to have a say in the process. It can meet your timelines and it can meet your budget, and it just looks a lot more flexible, and you still end up with the decision making at the end. And then there's just coaching. So sometimes you can't get all the parties together. Some people just want information about how to go through some things, different perspective. So coaching kind of rolls a lot of different things or fills in the gaps for things when there's not an official process that you can go through. So a little more about my background. The Certified Elder Mediator Advanced is a different, so Marianne last week at OAFM, so Ontario Association of Family Mediators, it told you there's two routes to becoming a designated elder mediator. And one is provincial through OAFM, and one is national through Family Mediation Canada. So when I started doing my training in this back in 2012, I was since certified in 2016. In 2012, there was no provincial standard. There was only a national standard. So it took me 4 years to get the training to do this. So at the base, the foundation is kind of the same. You have to be an established mediator. You've got to do your hours of training specific to elder mediation or mediation with age-related issues. So you're doing grief and loss, and you're doing dementias, and you're doing just different sensitivities, right? Training in addition to the mediation training you already had. So to do the national certification, you also end up doing a 3-hour exam, which is a lot of fun, and a role play. So you do a videotaped role play. And I had the pleasure of doing mine at a FMC conference with an audience, which did not stress me out at all. Added the level of complexity, and you have documented 5 cases, whether they were role plays or 5 cases. So it's just a different standard that's held, and it's a national standard, which allows you to apply for Elder Mediation International. So it's just a different look at it. And it, you heard from OAFM, there are not enough of us doing this with designations, and there's not enough, not interest, but awareness of it, which is why I'm really happy to talk to you about it today. So I looked before I came on, and right now in Ontario, there are 3 people with my designation, right? And I think Marianne said there was 37 elder mediators with the provincial designation. So there's a ton of opportunity for growth, but there's also a lot of good professionals out there that you can access, right? Which is great. So I am the chair-elect. I think Laura said I was the first chair-elect. I am not, because that means there was no chairs before me, and there certainly were. So I'm the chair-elect of Family Dispute Resolution Institute of Ontario, or FDRO. And although we don't have a designation for elder mediators, we are totally supportive of anything that can help or move forward families through some challenging times, and to support any kind of family dispute resolution, right? So whatever works for that family, we are very supportive of, we're advocates of, so very much in our wheelhouse for a lot of our members. And we are looking at kind of how wills and estates and a different mediation designation can perhaps enter into this world and support families, right? So I'm the owner, as you know, Families First Mediation. I have 2 other offsprings of that business, which is Separation Coaching and Positively Platinum. So Positively Platinum is kind of the brand I use to talk about positive aging and having that voice, and anti-ageism, which you hear all the time, right? So you have older adults kind of maybe being brushed off by doctors or professionals that say it's an age issue. Well, not everything can be an age issue, and that's not an acceptable response. How do you have a voice, right? How do you have these difficult conversations with your family when you're initiating? So I use Positively Platinum for that and kind of the speaking stuff. And then, as Laura mentioned, I sit on the Durham Elder Abuse Network. So for 2 reasons. One, so that I can offer support for any families that need this mediation, or if I can help out in any way for a dispute, but it's also to get access to resources that my clients need, right? So my specific training is, I know wills and estate law, restorative justice, mental health, first aid, workplace. So it's a lot of interesting things that kind of come together to work with, to help me work with the families, right? So I have a lot of information on these slides, and I know I do. I'm not going to read them. I don't want you to read them while we're having this conversation, although it is a bit one-sided, I understand. You'll have access to these slides later. And the last slide is my contact information. You have full access to me afterwards. So if you don't want to ask a question at the end, if I didn't answer something, or you don't want to answer, or you don't want to ask it in this forum, feel free to look at the slides later, email me, contact the office if you need to, right? So these are kind of the things that Laura went through. So I won't do that again for you. But what is elder mediation? So really, we know the name is that the name is not as respectful as it could be for a variety of reasons. It is, however, what it's being called to date. The designations are in elder mediation. It really is the mediation of a conflict or disagreement, dispute involving an older adult. So the scope of it can be huge. If you talk about it just being an older adult has to be a participant, or their wishes or interests have to be present in this dispute, the scope is quite large, right? There's a flexibility of the process that doesn't exist in other processes of dispute resolution, specifically if we talk about kind of litigation, right? So who is part of the process? It can be family, and we talk about family not just in bloodlines, that it's neighbors and friends and support people and anybody the family thinks is family or considers family, right? You know, I have the where it's held, where the mediation is held. Used to be a bigger thing because now we're all at home doing Zoom, but it could be in a care facility. It could be in the older adult's home. It could be in another family home. It could be in a hospital setting. So even the flexibility there you get, right? With the process, who can participate in the process and building the process. You are part of building this process. So the participants have a say in when they would like it, what their budget looks like. You know, how do we get sometimes the older adults that can't participate or have limited or going to have limited participation? Is there a good time of day? Do we have one-on-ones with them separate from a big family meeting, which is just going to put more stress on them? So how we design the process is really interesting. And even the styles that we use as mediators to kind of get the story out, get the voices heard, you know, we kind of flip between narrative and interest-based and storytelling and evaluative and insight, like you heard from Marianne last week. We use different styles, sometimes in the same mediations and the same meetings, to kind of get to the core of what's happening and get people to move forward, right? And mediation really is, lots of issues that come up in elder mediation environments are not really legal, or they don't have a legal remedy, right? So we're talking about things that really there's no, you know, you would think there's no inherent reason to bring in a lawyer for some of these things because there's nowhere really they can take it. The decisions should be with the family or the individual, and there's not a lot sometimes that judges can do to this or for these issues, right? So we like to kind of have them come up in this environment and use self-determination and autonomy to have the families make the decisions, right? So I like having a conversation really about why elder mediation is different, right? Because in my world, I see elder mediation as just another part of the family, the family life cycle. It's still a family mediation to me. If we look at it legally, wills, estates, elder kind of they do fall into civil, which look very different. They're not treated as family conflicts, family legal conflicts. They're treated as civil ones, in which case they're dealt with differently. They're approached differently from the legal side, right? The legal environment, the court system is not set up to support families. We know this across the board, right? And elder mediation is another one of those places. So if we start with, you know, people know about family mediation, but they know it usually from a separation and divorce perspective. They don't know what they can do with elder mediation. And so in red there, I kind of have this, when I started after 2012, when I started doing this kind of training, I was like, you know, the light bulb went on and this was amazing that I was getting different sensitivities and a different approach and, you know, understood why I didn't just have two people in a room, right? I didn't have the partners in a room like I did in separation and divorce. I could have 20 people in the room and I could have the older adult that was the focus of this mediation not participate at all, right? This all looked very different. So I remember having a conversation, and that's what the red is, had a conversation with a mediator who did primarily separation and divorce. And they said, I can mediate, I know how to balance, you know, I know how to manage power imbalances, I know how to do this. I do not understand why I would need specific training to do elder mediation. I don't know why I would need a designation. And I thought, you know, instead of bashing my head against the wall, I'm not going to continue this conversation. And it leads back to the opening sentence here, which is, you know, you don't know what you don't know about mediation with age-related issues. And that is a quote from a superstar in the elder mediation area, which is Judy McCann-Berger, who I did most of my training with. And I saw an email right before I came on today to say that she will be one of the panelists on October 1st. That is a webinar that EIPO is hosting. So I strongly encourage you to get onto that. But like, again, so there's more people involved, there's different sensitivities, and the outcomes are different. And this is always interesting. People say, well, I don't know about elder mediation. And when I hear about it, I don't know what the outcome will be. And we're going to talk about some of those outcomes today. But the outcomes are very different. So if I go into a separation and divorce mediation, the outcome for the clients is they're going to have to deal with property, they're going to have to deal with support. If they have children, they're going to have a parenting plan, right? Their hope is they will come out with a document at the end, making all these decisions. The outcome is not usually set when we start an elder mediation, right? We know we have a dispute, and they don't know how it's going to get resolved. All the participants, you could have 10 people in a room that all believe the solution is very different. And sometimes as elder mediators, we get to participate all the way through the process to the end. And sometimes we don't. We get the family talking, they make a plan, and they go off on their own and keep going, which is great, right? And other times you're there till the end, you have a pass off, in the worst case scenarios, you've got to pass off to legal support. But there's no, it depends is a terrible answer. And I know that, but the outcomes really are dependent, and what the mediation looks like is dependent on the issues and the families themselves. Your elder mediation should be as unique as your family, right? And there's a wider, the next slide, I'll go to that now. But the skills and the training and the agreements and even the relationships that we're dealing with, in a separation divorce, we're dealing with a significant relationship between two parties. And it could be, it looks very different when you're untangling a 50-year marriage than you do a 5 or 10-year marriage, right? But these relationships in elder mediation, these families, the relationships have been in place since birth, right? I mean, and there's so many dynamics, and you have siblings, and my brother is still my brother from when he was 12, and he was annoying, and, he was terrible with money. And that's still in the back of my head when I'm having conversations at 45 about caring for, for our parents. And although it really is any older adult, I tend to, just for simplicity and time, use a lot of mom and dad versus aunts and uncles and older siblings. And there's lots of older adults that we work with and that obviously are part of your family. But simplicity today, I'll kind of talk about moms and dads. And I get very different cases, I think, than other mediators across the board. I now have a reputation for doing high conflict. And lovely for me, I have a good support system at home, which can bring me down after some of the more difficult conversations that I get to have. But I don't shy away from them. And I understand that the families really need to have these conversations, these difficult conversations. So when people come to me, they are looking for realistic, practical problem solving, right? So a lot of our training is, we want to strengthen the relationship. We want to rebuild relationships. We want to be preventative. We want to be proactive. And that's just not a lot of the experience. They're lovely, but those cases are kind of more few and far between. That's the goal. The goal is, I need a solution. We have to move forward. We're often in crisis before this comes up, sadly. It's not the preventative that we would really like. It's crisis mode. And it's a solution to keep them out of courts. It's a solution to keep families, the autonomy with the families and the decision-making with the families, right? It doesn't look like in practice what you hear about in training, or at least that is my experience, which is what I'm sharing with you today, right? So if we've got power of attorney disputes, it's not for you to say, here's what I believe should happen. It's for you to make a decision that person that gave you the power of attorney, that trusted you to make decisions on their behalf, you're doing it in their best interest, based on their wishes. It's not what you think should happen, right? And when we look at business succession, we see, especially with families in this environment, they've taken care of the finances, they know how that will be handed over and compensation will work, and they've handled the legal contracts and the partnerships and the corporations, they've dealt with those. But you have a family, often you'll have the older adults transitioning, right, in succession planning to the younger family members, and they still revert back. So yes, I know you're going to take care of it and you're running the show now, but I'm still your mom, I'm still your dad, I want to be there for you. You're not going to handle this right. Because often those businesses have been built up by those parents or those grandparents, right? And they're their babies too. And handing it off is a very challenging thing. And what does that handoff look like? When should mom and dad be coming in? How do the younger children in the family or the younger family members share and keep them involved, right? So that the succession planning doesn't have a one day you're part of something you built and the next day you're retired, not doing anything, and you hope your business is going well, right? So, end of life conversations, difficult conversations. Should they happen proactively? Yes. Do they? No, right? This is the stuff we're dealing with, but it really is practical solutions, right? And they're not always pretty. They are supported by the families, which is the most important thing, right? and helping them have the conversations without judging is so, so important, right? Even the language that is used. So you hear a lot, and some of this stuff as I go through may sound familiar. So I've heard, and it's one of those things that really kind of gets me, I hear there's now a role reversal, right? My parent is the child and I'm now the parent. And I'm always taken back by that. And I think, no, there's no point in time where you are the parent of your parent. That doesn't work. You will always be the child, and your role may look a little different. And now you may do some caregiver stuff and you may help with decision making, but you're always going to be the child of that parent, right? And it's not respectful to say anything else. And if you don't kind of put it in a, if you don't use a different lens for that, it's very hard to get around things, right? And people are very busy and you get, I just know better, right? Let me just take care of this for you. Or I know this is best for you. You're no shape to make this decision. Just let me do it. And it's often not malicious. It is just lack of time, lack of energy, lack of understanding. But the elder mediation or the elder mediator in the room can kind of say, let's take a step back, right? What does this look like? What should it look like? How can we use respectful language to acknowledge the role that we have all had forever, and just the change in the role, right? It doesn't mean there's a role reversal. And that's, to me, disrespectful to say that. And I know it's just language and the way certain things are presented, but just being aware of those things, right? And having somebody else maybe raise awareness for you in the meetings. So the complexity, I like the numbers on the left-hand side, I think are great, because I think elder mediation in a lot of ways, since it's putting the self-determination back on the families, is kind of going back, kind of a return to families taking care of their own, right? So grandparents that lived at home in 1890, 90% of grandparents lived at home with family. You were right there. The family was taking care of things. There was no dispute about that. You didn't bring outsiders in, right? And you still kind of have that culture. Why would you bring an outsider in as an elder mediator into what is a family dispute or a family concern? And then it decreases. But I mean, in 2001, there was 7%. If we follow that logic, there's probably less now. So where are the grandparents now? They're on their own. They're doing their best. They're in care facilities. They're living on their own, aging, right? Aging at home. All of these wonderful, what you think positive things, but we now have that distance between the people that support and provide care, right? And the want to ask for that help, right? From a parent to a child, there's that distance there that makes it harder. So elder mediation in a lot of ways is kind of bringing the family back together, at least to do decision making. Maybe not to repair relationships, but at least for decision making, right? And there's, there's a couple of things on this slide. One is dependency, right? This really adds to the complexity. And I would like to raise this issue, or, but I have a concern about this issue, but I don't want to rock the boat. Excuse me. This friend, my grandchild, my son, my daughter, they help me. I don't drive anymore. I'm not comfortable driving at night. They drive me places. They bring my groceries. They take me to appointments. They help me manage my money. What happens if I rock the boat? I need that support. What happens if I raise an issue that I'm not comfortable with, right? I lose that dependency. And just two quick things, I guess three, the cognitive decline that's at the top of the middle column, and capacity. And they are not equivalent, right? So capacity is king. You will always hear I say capacity is king. And I say, you don't like the decision. A lot of cases when I get it brought in, it's like, well, I don't think, mom's making the right decision or dad is making the right decision. I have concerns. So there's a capacity issue. And I said, is there truly a capacity issue? Well, no. Okay. At 52, I'm allowed to make decisions my children don't like or don't agree with. At 72, I'm also allowed. And at 82, I can make decisions my children don't like. If there is capacity, your older adult is allowed to make decisions you don't agree with, right? And that cognitive decline may be in one area, but not others, right? And it may be a good day versus a bad day, and the decisions may not have looked any different anyways, right? So just don't say, oh, dad had an off day. I think there's a concern. Now I'm worried about capacity. Don't jump from 0 to 100, right? And again, we talked a little bit about the legal versus non-legal issues. Caregiving is hard. Like there's a lot of complexities that that add to the joy that is elder mediation. Let me say it that way. So the 4 biggest concerns that we hear in elder mediation, all of my family members don't want to participate, so this won't work, right? Kind of goes back to that separation and divorce. I need both parties to participate or I don't have a mediation. In elder mediation, I have a mediation as long as anybody wants to participate. Those that are interested in participating can participate. And those that don't, maybe we can get creative and do a one-on-one. Maybe they can send an email with their interests. Maybe they don't want to participate in a meeting, an online, a face-to-face meeting, but they're happy to send me an email or write down what their concerns are or what their stand is. Maybe they want to be informed how it ended up, but don't really want to get into it, right? It's okay that all family members don't want to participate. Let's do the work we can do with the people that are interested, right? And not hold up the whole process. My family members live all over the place. Absolutely. Guess what? If COVID has done nothing else, it has brought conference calling and video conferencing into the mainstream. That's okay. We were doing this before. We did not have, when I talk about having meetings with 10 people in a room, they probably weren't all in the room. I would have 1 on conference call. I'd have 2 on Skype. I've had 3 or 4 there. I'd had other ones that would put stuff in writing or I'd follow up with later. It's okay. We can still get the family together and we can get creative about it. Welcome to elder mediation. The older adult doesn't have capacity or can't be present, right? Common concern. But who can share? So if they don't have capacity, do they have capacity in any way, shape, or form? How do we want to involve them in this? Is there something that was documented previously that says we know what their wishes are? We now have to work together to act on them. Do we not know what they are? Do we have a partner? Do we have a friend? Do we have a neighbor, a care worker? Do we have somebody else that can help bring that voice into the room, right? And if not, let's sit and talk about that person. What were they like, before they, what were they like when they were making decisions? How strongly did they feel about certain things? Do they have some capacity? Can we have a very small 15-minute meeting with this person at the right time of day to get some information, or even just, to meet them and say hi, so that I, as the mediator, have some concept of who these people are, right? To any way, shape, or form we can bring that person's voice into the room, let's do it, right? That is okay. And that's if there's a capacity issue. Or, there's wills and estates where the person is not ever going to be able to be present. But again, we go back to how do we find out what their wishes are, right? And there's suspected or real abuse, power imbalances. There are usually power imbalances. Our jobs as elder mediators are to manage those power imbalances, whether it's the hierarchy of the family, it's the dependency, it's a power of attorney, there's a capacity issue. There's lots of cases where there is suspected abuse. There are also a lot of cases where one party or one sibling or one child will bring that concern into a mediation to sometimes bully or get some leverage, right? And sometimes it's, I'm not sure, but I want us to look into this. I want to make sure everything is okay, right? So it's having a safe environment to have these conversations. At the end of the day, I have a duty to report, right? So there are certain issues, and one of them I'll talk about, well, I guess 2 I'll talk about when we do the cases where there was either suspected or abuse, and the older adult decided that they did not want to proceed with it. But it was very clear that it was happening and informed, gave them information on what their options were, and they chose a different route, right? So the reality of elder mediations is anybody, it's really not that hard to start. You can phone an elder mediator. And I say that, kind of in jest, but it truly is that easy to get some information about how this works and would it work for your family. And anybody can initiate. So I've been initiated by care homes, agencies, the older adult themselves, family members, neighbors. It doesn't matter who starts it. It matters how we go forward, right? So it's whether the invitation comes from me in my office and says, hey, so-and-so has contacted us and we're really interested in having a conversation around this. Who do you think should be involved? Are you interested in talking a little bit about it? The credentials, again, I talked about them a bit earlier. And it's not just the kind of whether you want a provincial or national standard, it's what else is that person bringing to the table, right? So I have a background in restorative, and I have a background on financial. So what's the issue? Are those two relevant in addition to my family mediation training and my elder mediation training, right? My workplace mediation training, is that helpful because it's a business issue, a business succession, a family business that we need to talk about, right? We've got no decision-making power. So it is truly up to the families themselves to make these decisions, right? Our task is to keep you on task, and not let you kind of take a left turn, as I say, take a left turn and kind of have a lot of conversations that may not be focused. So if I know you want to be kept to a timeline and budget is really important, I'm going to say, this is super important. It sounds really important. Do you want to keep having this conversation and put the other stuff on the back burner, or do you want to flip it? What do you want to do with it? But it's still your decision on how you want the process to go forward, right? And again, the reality of elder mediations that we'll look at, sometimes the solutions aren't pretty, right? And sometimes the concerns and the issues that are brought to you are not pretty. So I'll talk to you a little bit about a financial dispute, and some of this kind of goes to, it can go to estate planning and misinformation that people have about estate planning and probate fees and how to keep stuff out of wills. So mom added daughter to a joint account. So made it a joint account with the daughter. The daughter said, I just want to log in. I'm going to help you manage your money, right? Mom says, great, that's wonderful. If you can't trust your family, who can you trust? And the mom noticed money started coming out of the account, and it wasn't her that was taking the money out of the account. And she started getting concerned. So had some income in addition to OAS and CPP, and started being very fearful that she wouldn't have enough money for her housing or for her bills, and didn't know where this money was coming from. Didn't know why this money was coming out of the account. Was fearful about having this conversation with the adult child to say, where is my money going? It's a difficult conversation, right? And just didn't want the joint account anymore. And I said, okay, you have, and I was brought in by an agency. Do you want to have a conversation with your daughter? Yes. I said, because right now you have the option to just start another account, right? And kind of some of it is providing information. You can start another account and have your money put in there. Have your OAS and your CPP go in there, put your income in there safely. And they said, no. If that happens, my daughter will know, and that will break down the relationship. That is just not going to be a good thing. I need her to hear me. I'd like to know where the money's going, but I need her to hear me that I don't want this joint account. So daughter agreed to participate. And mom kind of said right at the beginning, I don't want a joint account. I don't think I need you to oversee it. There's money missing and I'm worried. And didn't really get any good answers from the daughter about where the money was going and what was happening. So the long and the short of it is, the daughter agreed that she had a lot of stuff going on with her children. That is where the money was going to the grandchildren. Didn't want to be part of this account, but was kind of using it to her own benefit. And kept saying, no, mom doesn't need her own account. I need to be on joint. This is really important. And mom kept saying no. And I said, I don't think you're listening. So the result was, the daughter went to the bank with mom, came off that joint account. Mom opened up her own account, because the flip side was mom was hiding cash in the house, which was putting her at risk, right? If it was stolen, if there was fire, if something happened, because she didn't want it going into this account and having her daughter take it, right? Seems like a great idea. Put somebody on as a joint account holder, but in practice becomes a problem, right? So in that case, they ended up with, I love you, worked out, was really nice. There was financial abuse, which we did figure out during the mediation. Mom did not want to go to the bank and have it escalate, right? Mom's choice, right? Mom made an informed decision. We let her know all of the options, and that's how that resolved, right? The caregiver concern, older adult, trying not to talk fast because I know I've got like 8 minutes left. Older adult, had a nice big house to herself, 90 years old, very social, out all the time, brought an adult child in to help. It was getting harder to maintain the house, help for cooking, cleaning, stuff like that. The adult child was supposed to finish the basement and live down there. It ended up and it was the older adult that brought me in, because at some point the adult child had not finished the basement. In the winter, double car garage, double car driveway, was not shoveling the parents' side of the garage, so they couldn't go out. Was using the money and not bringing groceries home, was eating all the food. switched bedrooms. So they now have the big bedroom with the ensuite, and the parent ended up in the guest bedroom. And there was just all this stuff going on. And she said, I just need this person out. This isn't working. I'm not feeling safe in my own home. Police were involved. Police removed the adult child. So long story short, mom lets adult child back in because they don't have anywhere to go, right? At the end of the day, I am a parent. I support my children, not to my benefit. The sad part of this was, and this kind of was a cycle and went on for a while, the parent had to sell the house. The only way to get the child out of the house was to sell the house. And she did not want to sell the house. And she moved to a retirement community, which was not what she wanted to do. But it really was the only way, because this child was just felt they were entitled. And as long as they stayed in that house would be there, and the money would come to them through inheritance. And if they went, you know, if their parent went to a care facility or a retirement home, they would be using their inheritance to live on, right? Not a great, you know, mom ended up being happy with the fact that, you know, this relationship was completely terminated, obviously with the selling of the house, but not a pretty solution, but it worked, and that was what the family decided, right? Housing dispute, you know, there was a long-term care. There was an a parent in a long-term care facility, beginning of COVID. 3 siblings, different provinces. The disagreement became, is the parent safer in this long-term care facility during COVID, or should they be with me? And one of the children said, I can do it. I can bring the parent to me. I will take care of them. I'm really concerned. And there was a capacity issue. So the adult, the parent did not participate. But we've had a lot of conversations around what was in the best interest of the parent, and was putting them on a plane or traveling across country in that current state in the middle of COVID to be housed in a province that they didn't know. Was that in their best interest? And we ended up I worked with the family to kind of put a plan together that said, you know, here's how we're going to do this. Here's how we're going to manage this. And the parent stayed in that long-term care facility, right? So I need the difficult healthcare conversation is a lot around, you know, kind of a more common theme, which is, I think, mom, you can no longer care for dad at home. I think, dad, you can no longer care for mom at home. They're not getting the best care. It's taking too much out of you. This is the best thing for you. This is the best thing for them. And again, it's kind of tying that preventative, proactive conversations back to where we started, and saying, you know what, this person, they've been together 50, 60 years. It is not as simple as, and they probably know it's in the best interest to move, but they might have made a promise to their spouse, right? What happens when that spouse is no longer present? They've been sharing the same bed. They've been sitting watching Jeopardy together every night. It doesn't look like a spousal relationship, does not look like the one that you have as a parent and child. And really understanding and acknowledging that is just so important. And they come from a good place. These conversations are difficult, but they're really not malicious. The children, our grandchildren, often think it's the best thing, and they're trying to do its best, but forgetting the difference in the relationships, right? So I would leave this slide. There's lots of reasons why you would choose elder mediation. Here's my favorite slide. This is my dad. I got his permission. At the end of the day, you would choose elder mediation because you are family, and families fight, and families get stuck, and you know each other, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. And choose it because you can. Choose it because it is a viable option for dispute resolution that leaves the decision-making with your family, right? And the one that I know Laura said she was excited to see this slide, so I'll spend my last 3 minutes on this. And again, I know I'm giving you a lot of information. You have the slides, you will have the slides, and I'm always here to follow up with anything afterwards. You will have my contact information. So on the legal side, we can work to narrow down the issues, the legal issues. So either, you know, strip out the legal issues that really do need to be taken care of by a lawyer, and address the other ones in mediation, which is really very helpful, right? Legal representatives can participate in mediation. We provide that safe and confidential environment, which looks very different and feels more senior, older adult friendly, and the fact that other people can participate feels more friendly to resolve issues than the confrontational one that litigation is. It's a bit easier to identify sometimes the suspicions of abuse, but allow the older adult, like in two of those examples, to address how they want it to go forward, right? Not everybody wants their child to be taken in by the police or questioned by the police on something, right? They want to handle it in a different way, and it's more timely, right? From the health perspective, we work with all sorts of agencies, right? I'm brought in by agencies, brought into hospital settings, brought into care settings. The older adults' wishes are so important. We can include a representative from the care workers, right? Like we can include a doctor, and we have, or I've had the family go back to the doctor to explain something so they can make decisions. So that whole kind of holistic, it's almost like a part of the healthcare system, right? If we're using it properly. And the government as elder mediators, I sit on DEAN, the Durham Elder Abuse Network, so that I can get the referrals, right? So that I know what the community supports are there for families. It promotes wellness and communication and a different way to resolve disputes. It keeps, hopefully, older adults in their homes, in a family environment versus a long-term care environment, keeps them in those environments longer. And advocacy, our role is doing things like this and sharing information in terms of legislation and programming and funding, and is speaking out for the families that we work with and helping them speak out about some of the solutions and some of the needs. So with that, right on my 145 mark, and I know I skipped a few things, but again, my contact information is here. You will have these slides. We've got 15 minutes for me to answer, anything and everything that you've thought of. And I thank you so much for your time.
Wonderful, Julie. Thank you so much. I can tell you, first and foremost, our chat box has been a flurry of activity with wonderful comments and feedback, and just so much thankfulness for the information that was provided. So we'd like to first, on behalf of course, of Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, say thank you. And our participants are also just echoing the fantastic presentation that they just viewed. So in reviewing some of the questions, so our Q&A box as well has a flurry of questions. First, a lot of comments and questions, and I myself, this personally touched me when you talked about role reversal, where as myself, the adult child begins to now think I'm the parent, and by no means wanting to be disrespectful to mom, but sometimes saying, Ma, I got to make decisions now. So a lot of people are asking if you can just sort of talk about that again for a few moments, just to help us as perhaps the older adult children respectfully speak to our parents when we sometimes feel we are the parents, which you're right, we're not.
Yeah, and we're not going to be. And it's just acknowledging, like, there's certain things. So some of this is, so separation divorce comes up a lot now that, we've got grandparents' rights, right? So just looking at parents in that in a different way. So grandparents' rights, we've got blending families, and the blending families after separation divorce is I'm moving mom or dad in with me, mom or dad are moving in with me, right? And you've got this kind of blending, and you forget that if you're blending, what does help look like, right? You've got the older adult that may be moving into a care facility, maybe moving in with you. That's great. You've got a house furnished with stuff. So do they. Well, if they're moving into your house, their stuff disappears. Well, how is that respectful? And how are they going to be okay with that? Or I just need to have this happen. I've done this. I've made an appointment. I've called your doctor. You're going to go do this, right? Again, it's usually coming from a good, caring place, but it's not taking that moment. When we talk about the mom or dad should be in a care facility and trying to talk your other parent into that, it's giving them a moment to breathe and sharing your perspective and asking for theirs. Like, this is my opinion. I really want you to hear it, mom. And here's my concerns. What are yours? They know this is exhausting. They know caregiving is hard, but it has to be their decision, right? Can I help you? Can I give you some respite? Can I go with you? If I made some appointments to long-term care facilities, could we go together so that you can get some information and get a feel for what they're like? Maybe I need to know what they're like. What are your concerns and how can I support you? Versus, here's what needs to happen. We don't have a lot of time. We just need to do this. It's taking a moment to really ask questions and be interested to know the answers. If that answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much. And I'm sure it answered for a lot of our participants today and really gave us a different perspective on how to approach things. We talked a little bit about, of course, being in crisis mode. And sometimes this is where we always react. Can you maybe help a lot of our participants who are talking about how do we bring it to the prevention mode? How do we bring up the topic before we get to crisis mode?
Yeah, and that's always, again, for the advocacy piece, you can talk to OAFM, you can talk to FMC, you can talk to private practitioners. We would really like to be, these conversations to happen ahead of time. And I think it's awareness, right? Is desire to have those difficult conversations, because head in the sand is sometimes much easier. It will go away. And when we talk about decisions that you made around powers of attorneys or wills or your care planning, the decisions are made. And I often hear the older adult go, it won't be my problem. Family can fight. I'm like, but you don't want your children fighting. This is why you didn't approach it with them ahead of time. If this is your wishes for care planning, or, I've mentioned end of life, like certain decisions you've already made, is it also respectful for you to share that with your children? So there's that, as a parent, I'm the decision maker, which is fair, but why I don't need to share it with my family. And I think kind of changing some of that to say, yes, you can, and you can be respectful, and maybe you owe it to them a little bit so that you're setting them up for success when you're not available to make these decisions, right? So it's also kind of putting a bit of the ownership on the older adult to say, you're going to have to start some of these, right? And do so respectfully. This is not hold everything in, right? And just, it was my decision, I made it, period, right? It's kind of opening up a bit to that possibility that those conversations are valid and should happen.
Perfect, thank you. Lots of questions about capacity assessments and understanding one's cognitive capabilities. So the themes came around if the family is concerned about raising red flags to their elder mediator, if perhaps the elder mediator themselves is seeing red flags that there could be some cognitive concerns. How is it handled? And what if one of the family members is not on board in having a capacity assessment done? So a lot of questions in that question. I'm sorry.
So there is, depending on the amount of time that I get to work with a family, there are certain things I would see and not see, right? So a lot of times I'm basing it on, what the participants tell me. This is an issue. This is an issue. I feel this is an issue, right? But honestly, capacity gets very mixed up with just bad decision making, right? And what is showing you that there's a capacity issue? And is there an agency, a support system that is working with that older adult? Are they in a retirement home? Are they somewhere that somebody else that really is knowledgeable about this can work with? Can you, as the child, go to a doctor's appointment? Can we talk to mom or dad and say, we're noticing a couple of things respectfully? Would you be okay if we kind of jointly made a decision and talked to your doctor about some of these things that I'm seeing that you may be experiencing? And kind of, to me, it's more education to see if there is one, right? To see if there's capacity issues. And with COVID, capacity assessments have been very challenging to get, which is not helpful. But sometimes, at least in the mediation, if you've got either the power of attorney, which again, we can't get the power of attorney to kick in unless, for personal care, unless we've got that capacity. So it's, can you get the older adult at the best time of day with the right supports to agree to something that is in their best interest, right? Without having to do it formally. Would they agree to something, right? To open up a joint account or to let somebody be part of a doctor's appointment. Sometimes you can get them at the right stage and say, and they go, yeah, this is important to me. And we document it. And, we reach out to the proper people and line up capacity assessments when they should happen, if they could happen, and they get done, privately by the family, and they're paid for.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Very well said. And a few questions asking about if you could talk about your personal opinions on the future of elder mediation. Where do you see it going? Upcoming trends, events? What more information to offer for families for helping them understand that this is a viable option to use and go through? So we're really looking for your insight on this.
Oh, goodness. It is through organizations like OAFM and Family Mediation Canada and EAPO, and you guys putting on this to create awareness. It is us as elder mediators, although there's few of us, getting out there and spreading the word and letting community resources know we exist, and because we can't get to all the families, and letting doctors know that we exist, and becoming part of those kind of almost healthcare teams, and certainly making sure that we are doing a good job letting lawyers know, and the people that they're helping people resolve these disputes, that they know there's an offshoot, that there's a more family friendly way to do this. I think, and again, we're looking at it through FDRO, is I think wills and estate mediation is something, and not litigating, because not seeing the family as a family, to me, in that situation is just so harmful, right? And we wouldn't consider it from a family mediator perspective, but it doesn't look like that from the lawyers. And I think there's so much repairing and resolution that can happen with families on that side. But to me, it's awareness, right? It's being part of the World Elder Abuse Prevention Day. Like, it's just, it's just being there, and just keep knocking down doors until it starts to become a little more mainstream, right? As part of estate planning, I would love to see it. So with those lawyers that are working with a client to create their plan, and they know there's something that's going to be contentious, is trying to say, look, what's going to start, right? If this will comes up, can I ask you to have a conversation with your family through elder mediation proactively, kind of set the stage, right? Can you talk about your care, your care plan, and what you want and what you don't want to have happen, and put in writing, so it makes it, less difficult for the families when there is a crisis.
Definitely. Thank you. And I love how you just said it's family friendly. And sometimes that gentler approach really can resonate with families to help them heal and come together. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're almost out of time. So Julie, again, thank you so much for your insight, your expertise. It is truly appreciated by all of us who joined today. And if everyone who's still on the webinar with us, please take, just as Laura said, 60 seconds, we promise, to fill out our evaluation. We truly appreciate hearing from you. And this helps us continue to improve upon and bringing you topics of interest with amazing subject matter experts like our friend Julie Gill today. So if you could do that right after the webinar is wrapped up, and looking forward to joining us. Julie already gave us a plug for October 1st for our fantastic webinar coming on mediation and restorative justice to address elder abuse. So we're very much looking forward to that on October 1st, International Day of the Older Person, with our partners at the United Nations. And October 5th, again, being brought to you by Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, Intersections between Elder Abuse, Substance Abuse, and Disorders, October 5th from 1 to 2 p.m. Looking forward to seeing everybody joining us then. Once again, on behalf of Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, my wonderful colleagues, and Julie Gill, we'd like to thank everybody today, and Laura Proctor for beginning to host us and taking us through this webinar. Our ASL interpreters, who are always there to help provide fantastic interpretation for us. You can reach us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through our senior safety line. And as well, for further information and to view this webinar in the next 48 hours, we'll have it uploaded for everybody at www.eapon.ca. And we thank you everyone for your time today. Be well, be safe, and we'll see everybody on October 1st. Thank you so much.